If you grew up in the 90s or early 2000s in America, you know that there were two types of families. The ones who bought Lunchables and the ones who didn't. My parents didn't buy Lunchables. Now, Lunchables have been in supermarkets around the world for decades, but today they are being found in American high school cafeterias. And the story of how they got there is sketchy as hell. Today's episode is brought to you by our favorite people over on Patreon. These are the individuals who give us a little bit of money every single month to help support what we do. But it's not just a handout because they get exclusive access to content and behind the scenes stuff, as well as the ability to ask us questions and get a response. So if you want to support what we're doing and you like what you see, consider joining us over there. Now, right off the bat, I gotta say that this video is a little bit of a trigger thing for me because I never got Lunchables as a kid and I was horrendously jealous of everybody who did. I don't even want to admit this, but like, Mom, I used to throw out my lunches because I was embarrassed to eat the whole grain brown bread sandwich that you made for me. And all I wanted was those Lunchables. So it turns out Lunchables have actually been around since about the mid-80s. And it was at this point when the executive at Oscar Mayer, you know, the wiener company with the giant wiener cars, had the idea to make lunchtime more fun and convenient for kids. A noble idea, right? What could go wrong? See, at the time across America, more and more families were becoming dual income households, which meant that there was a hole in the market for convenient food that kids liked. Lunchables stepped in by releasing a delicious pre-made meal that kids got to put together themselves. Now at this point, it sounds pretty good, almost altruistic, right? But the sad truth is that it is all baloney. And there's another reason why Lunchables got founded, and it is also baloney. In the mid-80s, the once popular super processed lunch meat bologna was falling out of favor with American families. So Oscar Mayer assigned a marketing task force headed up by a food technician named Bob Drain to come up with a new way to market this stuff that, reminder, nobody wanted. Drain and his team were inspired by TV dinners and decided to repackage bologna in a way that kids would enjoy. He thought that kids might enjoy making their own little cheese and cracker sandwiches, and turns out he was right. The first Lunchables meal was the classic meat, cheese, and cracker combo that is still the brand's most popular product today. And it honestly hasn't changed that much over the years. Of course, Lunchables has branched out into other offerings like the DIY mini pizza and the dessert Lunchables, but the super basic meat cheese option is still flying off supermarket shelves today. In its first year, Oscar Mayer made $218 million off Lunchables alone. And the retention rate was through the roof, with more than 50% of shoppers coming back to buy more. But even with those impressive numbers, Lunchables wasn't turning a profit. The production cost was so high that Oscar Mayer lost $20 million on them in that first year. Something that we should also mention here is that Oscar Mayer was owned by Kraft Inc., the food company that would eventually become Kraft Heinz and dominate supermarkets around the world. But that hadn't happened yet, and the bigwigs at Kraft were sweating over the Lunchables loss. Now at this point, Lunchables was on the cutting room floor, and it would have been a one-hit wonder if it weren't for megacorp Philip Morris stepping in and buying Kraft. At the time, Philip Morris manufactured Marlboro cigarettes, Miller Beer, Maxwell House Coffee, and other brands that were household names across America. Put simply, they knew how to market their shit. The head dude at Philip Morris, who you probably won't know the name of, saw promise in Lunchables, and instead of cutting the product, he poured even more money into it. Lunchables eventually broke even in 1991, and in 1992, the year I was born, the brand made $8 million in profit. Now that number has only gone up, and in 2022, Lunchables made $1.8 billion, which was 8.6% of Kraft Heinz' total annual revenue. To understand why Lunchables took off the way they did, we have to zoom out and look at the prepackaged market as a whole. As we said, Lunchables were inspired by TV dinners that had been around since the 60s, so it's not like they invented prepackaged meals, right? They also didn't invent the concept of crackers and cheese either. What they did was they made it fun, convenient, and more specifically for children. By leaving the assembly up to the kids, they gave the youngins permissions to play with their food, which is great. I mean, I think kids should have the ability to play and make their own foods more often nowadays. But they were really deliberate about it. The way that you open a Lunchables meal is similar to opening a toy or a present. Oscar Mayer knew exactly what they were doing here. One of the first marketing campaigns for Lunchables used the slogan, "All day you gotta do what they say, but lunchtime is yours." If you wanted to make your own triple-decker cheese and cracker sandwich and top it off with a mini Kit Kat, you could. Now, the fact that the kids love these things and that the kids put them together made them not only popular with kids, but with their parents as well. People are busy, parents are tired, and if they can buy a Lunchable and just stick it in their bag and send them off to school, that's a hell of a lot easier than inventing a lunch from scratch. Impressively, Lunchables have never lost their grip on American culture. And now that they've been around for so long, they've cemented themselves as a nostalgic part of childhood, right along with running through sprinklers and selling your neighbor's overpriced lemonade. We actually talked about this in relation to LaCroix and Liquid Death water on our podcast. The idea being that certain kinds of products are presented to certain audiences, and the difference couldn't be more obvious with these two brands. If you want to see more conversations around subjects like this and support this channel, you can go over to our Patreon page and consider joining us there. But even from the beginning, it's not like anyone was misled into thinking that these things were good for you. They have even been called a nutritional disaster. Every single item in a Lunchable meal is made with ingredients that were chosen specifically because they were cheap to manufacture. According to nutritionists, Lunchables are super high in saturated fats, sodium, sugar, and preservatives. They are a far cry from foods in their natural state. The cheese slices are labeled a cheese product and have a lot more in it than regular cheese does. Specifically, more fat and salt usually, and the same goes for the meat. These Lunchables sometimes contain as much as 750 grams of sodium for a single serving, more than 30% of the daily recommended intake, while others have almost half a day's worth of the recommended saturated fat. Now, we could get into all like the statistics and all the numbers of why these things are bad, but you could also just Google search how mechanically separated meat is made, and you will get the gist. Now, it is important for us to add a little caveat here, because when we're saying the word processed in reference to food, it doesn't necessarily mean bad. Basically, anything that's not being sold in its original raw form, crackers, granola, canned beans, for example, that's a processed food. But they are not created equal, and some are definitely worse than others. So even though it is widely known that Lunchables are the opposite of nutritious, they've still taken over the kids' food market. And they have just recently entered a whole new arena in the form of school lunches. That's right. It was recently announced that Lunchables will be sold in school cafeterias across America this fall as a part of the National School Lunch Program. This program is administered by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and provides billions of free and low-cost lunches to kids around the country. Now, like us, you might be asking, how the heck does Lunchables qualify for this program when they're known for being literal trash? Would this program not have some kind of nutritional standard that their food has to meet? Smart you are, my educated, future-proof subscriber friend, because yes, they do. The USDA National School Lunch Program requires certain things. Stuff like having a minimum of 2.5 cups of fruit a day and 0 grams of trans fat per serving. Lunchables qualified for this program by taking a tactic that tons of other food companies have taken to get into school cafeterias. They changed their products, or at least they changed the products that are being sold to schools to meet the necessary standards, but just barely. The Lunchables on the supermarket shelves are staying exactly the same as before, so don't get your hopes up. But the ones that are being sold at schools now have more protein and grains. So how the heck did they do it, you're wondering? So you know those little mini pizza Lunchables, right? The ones you put together and they look terrible and they taste terrible? Well, under these guidelines, they have to contain 1/8 of a cup of a red-orange vegetable. How are they doing it, you might ask? It's the sauce. The sauce is the vegetable. It's so frightening. Now let's be clear. This is a genius marketing tactic on behalf of Lunchables. Let's just give credit where credit's due. Kids eat a lot of their meals at school, right? So it's a great place for them to get hooked on your product so that they beg mom and dad to buy it at the grocery store later. Lunchables is far from the first brand to do this, and we gotta zoom out to the entire school lunch program in America to understand how we got here. It's a disaster, just to summarize here. But school lunches in the US are funded by the federal government, but the money goes into the school systems to purchase the food. There are tons of brands competing for a spot in the cafeteria, and most of the time the cheapest brands win. At least it has been this way since the Reagan administration slashed the federal school budget by 25% in 1981. In an attempt to save the government money, a lot of changes were made, like reducing portion sizes, making free lunches less accessible, and changing nutritional guidelines. There was a lot of controversy when ketchup was declared a vegetable so that school lunches could still meet basic nutrition requirements while being hella cheap. This is when the fast foodification of school lunches began, and today the school lunch program is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Nutrition standards were kept purposefully vague so that cheap pre-made food that just wanted to be warmed up and tossed out the window could be made right there in a second. A lot of school cafeterias in America don't even have the equipment to cook real food, because that's not what they're used for. Common school lunches in America are reheated chicken nuggets, hot dogs, fruit cups, and other stuff that doesn't require a lot of prep. Have y'all seen those videos that compare school lunches from around the world? We'd basically choose any other country over America at this point.
You want Coca-Cola? You don't, no Coca-Cola? No? Coca-Cola, you don't drink? You don't drink Coca-Cola?
Thankfully, we are all Canadian here at Future Proof, so just gonna pat myself on the back there for that one. I actually don't know what our school food programs are like. They might, actually Canada might not be that much better, so maybe we can fact check this after we record and let me know. You might have put together that all of this was going on right around the same time that Lunchables was taking off. It's honestly a bit of a head scratcher that they didn't get into the lunch school program sooner. Fast food brands like Domino's and McDonald's have partnered with the school system for years by adjusting their foods just enough to meet the super loose standards. I mean, we all know that French fries are basically a serving of vegetable, right? Because according to the federal government, they are. Now, of course, over the years, there have been tons of backlash to school lunch programs in the United States from politicians and concerned parents. Michelle Obama used her time as First Lady to focus on making school lunches healthier, which brought a lot of awareness to the problem. Some organizations have also started working with school districts to serve fresh meals for lunch, but overall, it's hard to tell if much progress has been made on a large scale, especially given the fact that Lunchables are now a staple of that program. Now, for a quick second, I need to acknowledge that Lunchables fill a particular need. There are a lot of people in the United States that need access to cheap food, and in many places, you can pick up a Lunchable for $2. This might be the most convenient and easily accessible food for a lot of people, and that is a failure of our systems, not a benefit of Lunchables as a product. The fact that people need to go to these kinds of corporations to meet their basic nutritional needs is embarrassing and sad. Lunchables are just a small part of this huge issue, which is kids' nutrition in America. It's all junk food now. All these brands that are specifically targeted towards kids are training these generations to be picky eaters who crave sugary, salty, fatty junk stuff over real food that actually has some nutritional value. There's a reason why these products have been allowed to exist and thrive in North America more than in other places in the world. And it's because convenience and low cost have been prioritized over nutrition. But is that low cost and convenience really paying off for us as a society? In an ideal world, we are all collectively pushing forward to make better, more nutritious, real, locally made food the default option, or at least a competitive one. And maybe not buying Lunchables is the first step on that journey. Another crazy part of this whole story is like now I'm a dad as of like a week and a half ago, and so I'm gonna have to make the decision of whether or not I'm gonna feed Lunchables to my kid. And the answer is no. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure that you like it. If you want to see more of them, subscribe. And if you do, then we'll see you every week for another upload.